Have you ever noticed how the people who seem most put together are often the ones struggling the most with something nobody talks about? They've mastered productivity, habits, even mindfulness, but there's this one thing that keeps tripping them up. It's not what you'd expect. It's the gap between who they are when everything's going well and who they become when life gets messy. And here's what's fascinating about this gap. It reveals something fundamental about how humans actually work that most advice completely ignores. Think about your best day last month. You probably woke up feeling clear, made good choices, responded to challenges with patience. You were the version of yourself you recognize and respect. Now think about your worst day. Same brain, same values, but suddenly you're reactive, overwhelmed, making decisions that don't align with who you know yourself to be. Most people treat this like a personal failing. They think consistency means being the same person regardless of circumstances, but that's not how humans are designed to function. Here's what researchers are about human variability that changes everything. Your capacity to be your ideal self isn't fixed. It fluctuates based on factors most people never consider. Sleep debt accumulated over weeks, not just last night's rest. The emotional residue from conversations that happened days ago, even the subtle stress of having too many browser tabs open in your mind. When you understand this, something shifts. You stop trying to be the same person in every situation and start learning to master being human across different states of capacity. There's a woman who figured this out after years of beating herself for inconsistency. She noticed she could handle difficult conversations with grace when she felt resourced, but became defensive and reactive when depleted. Instead of trying to force herself to respond the same way regardless, she developed what she called capacity awareness. On high-capacity days, she took on challenging projects and had important conversations. On low-capacity days, she focused on maintenance and restoration. She stopped treating her fluctuations as weakness and started treating them as information. This isn't about lowering standards or making excuses. It's about working with human design instead of against it. Most advice assumes you have consistent emotional and mental resources. Meditation apps tell you to sit for 20 minutes every day. Productivity experts insist on morning routines that require significant willpower. Relationship advice suggests having deep conversations whenever issues arise. But real humans don't have steady access to their best selves. Some days you wake up with abundant patience and curiosity. Other days you're running on fumes before you even start. Pretending this doesn't matter creates more problems than it solves. Here's the part most people miss. When you try to be the same person in every situation, you actually become less consistent, not more. You set expectations your depleted self can't meet, then spiral into self-criticism that depletes you further. The people who seem most stable aren't the ones who never fluctuate. They're the ones who've learned to recognize their states and adjust their approach accordingly. If you're finding value in this perspective, it would mean a lot if you'd hit the like button and subscribe to Master Being Human. It helps more people discover content about working with human nature instead of fighting it. Consider 3 conditions that affect how you show up in the world. Think of them as your human operating system. First is your baseline capacity. This is your foundation. How much sleep you've been getting consistently, not just last night. Whether you've been eating in ways that support stable energy. If you've been moving your body regularly or sitting for hours daily. Your baseline capacity is built over time and can't be fixed quickly when it's compromised. Second is your current load. This includes obvious stressors like work deadlines and relationship conflicts, but also invisible ones. Decision fatigue from too many small choices, the mental energy required to maintain social masks, background worry about things you can't control right now. Most people underestimate their current load and wonder why they feel overwhelmed. Third is your recovery reserves. This is your ability to bounce back from stress and maintain perspective when things go wrong. It's built through practices that actually restore you, not just distract you. Time and nature, meaningful conversations, creative expression, spiritual practices that connect you to something larger than your immediate concerns. When conditions are strong, you have access to your wisest, most patient, most creative self. When one or more is compromised, you operate from a more reactive, survival-oriented state. Neither is wrong, but they require different approaches. Understanding this changes how you relate to your own inconsistencies. That time you snapped at someone you care about wasn't a character flaw. You were operating from a depleted state and trying to function as if you had full resources. The solution isn't to force yourself to be endlessly patient. It's to recognize when your capacity is low and adjust your expectations accordingly. This is what it looks like to master being human in everyday life. You start paying attention to patterns instead of judging individual moments. You notice what depletes you and what restores you, then design your life to support more restoration than depletion. Someone who understands capacity awareness might notice they're more irritable on days when they've been scrolling social media first thing in the morning. Instead of forcing themselves to be positive, they might change their morning routine to protect their mental energy for what matters most. Or they might realize that back-to-back video calls drain their social battery faster than in-person meetings. Instead of pushing through and becoming increasingly reactive, they could build buffer time between calls or limit how many they schedule in one day. This isn't about becoming precious or high maintenance. It's about becoming more effective by working with your design instead of against it. The most profound shifts happen when you extend this understanding to other people. Instead of expecting everyone to show up consistently regardless of their state, you start recognizing when someone is operating from depletion versus resource. You respond to their capacity, not just their behavior. That colleague who's usually collaborative but seems defensive lately might be dealing with capacity issues you're not aware of. Your partner, who's normally patient but has been short-tempered, could be carrying an invisible load that's affecting their ability to regulate emotions. When you understand that humans fluctuate, you stop taking other people's low capacity moments personally. You also stop trying to have important conversations or make significant decisions when either of you is depleted. This creates space for real connection instead of performative consistency. People can be human around you because you understand that being human includes having different levels of resource at different times. The traditional approach treats fluctuation as a problem to solve. You're supposed to transcend your human limitations through discipline and optimization. But this creates an exhausting cycle of temporary improvement followed by inevitable return to baseline, accompanied by shame about not being able to maintain unrealistic standards. The capacity awareness approach treats fluctuation as information to work with. Instead of trying to be the same person in every situation, you learn to be the right person for your current state. This creates sustainable change because it's based on human reality instead of idealized versions of who you should be. Over time, this builds something more valuable than rigid consistency. It builds adaptive resilience, the ability to maintain your core values while adjusting your approach based on circumstances. You become someone people can count on, not because you never change, but because you change in predictable, intentional ways.
This is particularly important in a world that demands more of human attention and energy than ever before. The old model of pushing through regardless of state worked when life moved more slowly, and there were clearer boundaries between work and rest. Now, you need more sophisticated approaches to maintain well-being and effectiveness. Mastering being human in this context means becoming curious about your patterns instead of judgmental. It means treating your fluctuations as data instead of failures. It means designing systems that support your humanity instead of trying to optimize it away. When you approach life this way, something interesting happens. You actually become more consistent, but in a deeper way. Your actions align with your values more often because you're not trying to force ideal behavior from a depleted state. You make better decisions because you recognize when you have the capacity for complex thinking versus when you need to keep things simple. People trust you more because you're reliable within realistic parameters. You show up as yourself instead of performing a version of yourself that isn't sustainable.
This approach ripples into every area of life. Your relationships improve because people feel permission to be human around you. Your work becomes more sustainable because you match tasks to capacity instead of forcing productivity from depletion. Your personal practices become more consistent because they're designed around human variability instead of optimal conditions that rarely exist. The goal isn't to eliminate fluctuation. That's impossible and undesirable. The goal is to dance with it skillfully, to recognize your patterns, honor your limits, and create conditions that support your best self while accepting your whole self. This is the foundation for everything else. You can't build sustainable habits, meaningful relationships, or effective work practices without understanding how your capacity fluctuates and designing your life accordingly. If this resonates with you, and you want to explore these ideas more deeply, I'd love to invite you to join our community on School. The link is in the description. It's a space for people who want to master being human through practical wisdom and real conversation, not quick fixes or optimization culture. We dive deeper into topics like capacity awareness and share experiences about implementing these insights in daily life. The people who thrive long-term aren't the ones who figured out how to be consistent despite their humanity. They're the ones who learn to be human with skill and intention. That's a completely different project, and it's one worth dedicating yourself to.